Hello everyone. Today's video is a Q&A video about methylene blue. So lots of questions about whether methylene blue can be combined with certain supplements, medications, things like that, and then a few clinical applications for conditions like Parkinson's disease and some other things too. I can't remember now, but I've got the list right here in front of me. So before jumping into this, as a reminder, nothing that I'm saying should be construed as medical advice. This is for informational purposes only. If you need medical advice, please talk to your healthcare provider to get that advice. And if you wouldn't mind, please taking a quick moment at some point to please like, share, subscribe, and or post a quick comment on the video. I would really appreciate it. So thanks in advance for taking a second to do that. So first question is, would I be able to add methylene blue in between maintenance doses of chlorine dioxide? So just as a quick little caveat, I'm not able to recommend chlorine dioxide. It's kind of this like verboten treatment, and I know folks use it, but I'm not, advocating the use of that. But I'm not aware of there being any interaction between chlorine dioxide and methylene blue. As the question kind of insinuated, can those be used at this, can they be used at the same time or in between dosages? And I mean, as a general rule, again, not advocating the use of chlorine dioxide, but generally we don't want to combine an antioxidative therapy like methylene blue with a pro-oxidative therapy. Pro-oxidative therapies would include things like hydrogen peroxide and ozone and different things like that, and chlorine dioxide would also be considered oxidative. Now methylene blue at high enough dosages does start to turn into a pro-oxidant, but you have to get into pretty high dosages, like 4 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, give or take, to my understanding. So most folks are taking somewhere in the 1 to 2 milligrams per kilogram body weight range, so that's very much in an antioxidant range. Next question is, can I take methylene blue and ashwagandha together? Not having any luck finding this on YouTube. Fair enough. Yeah, there's so many things on YouTube. Not everything on YouTube. Not all of the answers. But now there will be a video talking about ashwagandha and methylene blue. So with ashwagandha, to my understanding, it does have some mild serotonergic activity. So it is one of those herbs we kind of want to be cautious with methylene blue. That being said, as I've talked about in other videos, and as I will talk about later in this video in a bit more detail, things that boost up serotonin, along with methylene blue, it's more of a relative contraindication. We have to bear in mind, how much of a serotonergic effect is the substance having? Is a person on a high dose of an SSRI, or are they taking something that has a very, very weak, mild serotonergic activity like ashwagandha? And then also bearing in mind the route of administration and the dosage of methylene blue, where, to my understanding, all of the data that shows that methylene blue can cause serotonin syndrome with agents that increase serotonin all those studies have been done on intravenous methylene blue, which is administered very rapidly in emergency departments, which is very different than taking it orally at home. So, or orally, at a much lower dose on a regular basis, like day to day. In my practice, again, not giving any medical advice online here, but I have patients who are taking ashwagandha or supplements that contain ashwagandha and methylene blue, and I have not seen any issues to date. That being said, it's all about making an informed decision, informed consent. I talk to my patients about the possible interactions, and then they make a decision whether they want to work with it or not, but I have not seen any problems to date. So next one here is, I wondered if methylene blue would be helpful for my mother to take. She has Parkinson's disease and is on carbidopa levodopa. She's so she's just talking about some of the symptoms that her mom's experiencing, and so might she benefit from methylene blue is the punchline. So on paper, methylene blue and Parkinson's, or using methylene blue for Parkinson's, would make a lot of sense when we look at the pathophysiology of Parkinson's, which is complex, but one of the big take-home messages is that there is a lot of oxidative stress in the nervous system of patients who have Parkinson's diagnosis. There are some studies showing that different antioxidants like vitamin E and CoQ10, they have ameliorating effects against the development of Parkinson's and can help to potentially mitigate some of the symptoms of Parkinson's, at least in early stages. So methylene blue would make a lot of sense. I have a few patients with Parkinson's who are working with methylene blue, and I have seen some benefit, but I haven't honestly had that many patients work with methylene blue who have a Parkinson's diagnosis. We're usually working with other things, and there are plenty of agents that can be very helpful for patients who are dealing with Parkinson's, but just as it so happens, not many of my patients with Parkinson's are working with methylene blue. Oftentimes working with glutathione. If we can, we're working with neurofeedback. We're working with mitochondrial support. Anyways, I'll maybe make actually I have a Parkinson's video that I posted not that long ago. So please keyword search, search my YouTube channel for that if you're interested in learning about treatment options for integrative treatment options for Parkinson's. But that being said, I would use methylene blue probably more regularly in patients with Parkinson's if they weren't already on so many other things. So that oftentimes we're working with fairly high doses of glutathione and various other supplements. So I guess it's not that I have any. It's more just a logistical reason why I haven't recommended it to more folks with Parkinson's as opposed to any other particular reason. But definitely something that I would consider for my patients with Parkinson's. And I'm not aware of any interaction between methylene blue and levodopa carbidopa. Next question here is, I take Effexor and Wellbutrin. It says, I don't think that either is an SSRI, but I'm not sure. I'm really excited about the possible benefits of taking methylene blue. Is it okay for me to take with these medicines? So Effexor is an SNRI, so it's a selective serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor, so it does indeed boost up serotonin. So that would be one where the general thought is like, do not combine methylene blue with SSRIs or SNRIs. Now, as I said already in this video and in other videos, it is kind of a relative contraindication, and working with your doctor or other experienced healthcare provider to get tailored advice would be the thing to do. But Effexor does indeed boost up serotonin. Wellbutrin, on the other hand, to my knowledge, does not have any appreciable serotonergic effects. So there really shouldn't be the serotonin syndrome concern with Wellbutrin and methylene blue. But if one is taking both, then the Effexor is an SNRI, so it boosts up serotonin. So there would be some possible concern there. Next one is about taking Adderall with methylene blue, and I'm not aware of any interaction between Adderall and methylene blue. With that being said, there was like a couple of comments below that question, and somebody had chimed in saying that they took methylene blue with their Adderall, and they were taking a pretty high dose, if memory serves, and they found that it seemed to have kind of like a nervous system stimulating effect. They felt like it was, I believe they said they felt it was good, but it was kind of intense. So yeah, just everybody's going to be a bit different, but at least on paper, I'm not aware of there being a direct interaction between methylene blue and Adderall. Honestly, I don't have that many patients with ADHD who are working with methylene blue. Again, there's so many other tools, like methylene blue it's wonderful for so many different reasons, but things like say saffron, or working on food sensitivities, or working with neurofeedback, or working with different say like nervous system calming agents or calming approaches, like that can be a lot more. Those are some of the heavier hitters for ADHD. Now, if someone had ADHD and they also happen to have some cognitive decline or mitochondrial function issues, or like mitochondrial dysfunction or whatnot, then methylene blue might be indicated for those other reasons, not to specifically be working to help address ADHD, but maybe there is a role for it in that realm as well. So if anybody's taking it and find that it has been helpful or not helpful with their ADHD, please consider posting in the comment section so we can all learn if you're comfortable doing that. Next question here is, can you take metformin and methylene blue together? I'm not aware of there being any reason to think that those would interact. So I have patients on methylene blue and metformin, have not seen any issues. Can you take methylene blue with lamotrogene? And then, right, so it says, yeah, so little bit of background information here. So I talked to my neurologist. He looked it up in his reference manuals and said that he didn't see any issues. He also had never heard of anyone taking it orally before, because again, in conventional medicine, it's like IV methylene blue for in the emergency department for methylglobin, and that's it. So then online I read that lamotrogene has serotonergic properties and is not recommended to take with methylene blue, and that is the gist of it. So yeah, so my understanding of it is that lamotrogene does have some weak activity at serotonin receptors, but it's not generally thought to be like this big, it's not like meant to be a serotonergic drug. So it's again one of those things where especially if someone's taking lamotrogene to help control seizures, then we want to be really careful. So if I had a patient who was on lamotrogene and they started taking methylene blue, we thought methylene blue would be a good idea. I personally, with my patient, would start them at a very low dose and gradually increase it. I, always start with a lower dose and gradually increase in general for patients with methylene blue, but I would start like extra low and build up extra slow just to be on the safe side. But that's not because I'd be worried about a serotonin syndrome thing. It would be more like, well, are there ways that methylene blue might potentially interact with lamotrogene in terms of impacting its metabolism? Is it going to maybe make the lamotrogene not work quite as well? And the last thing I want to do is recommend something to someone that might, cause them to have seizures, because that's obviously very bad and not good. So I would go very cautiously, but I'm not aware of there being any direct interaction between those. Next one here is, I use hydrogen peroxide, 12%, 6 drops daily. Is it safe for me to use methylene blue? So the exact same answer for this question is, the answer for the chlorine dioxide question earlier is exactly the same for the peroxide. It's also a kind of a verboten treatment. I'm not allowed to recommend it. And it's not something I do recommend, but same thing, I'm not aware of any interaction between peroxide and methylene blue, and then just bearing in mind that antioxidant, pro-oxidant kind of balance, we just don't want to combine those together. Says, can I take methylene blue with donepezil I'm taking for Alzheimer's? So with donepezil, my understanding is that donepezil does have some binding affinity for serotonergic receptors, or for serotonin receptors, but it doesn't have like really appreciable serotonergic activity. Donepezil primarily boosts up acetylcholine levels in the brain and doesn't really appreciably impact serotonin. So this would be like a classic reason for folks to take methylene blue, because a good chunk of the human clinical trials on methylene blue are in patients dealing with dementia. So yeah, lots of folks out there, I'm sure, are taking methylene blue with their donepezil. And yeah, so I would prescribe it to one of my patients if they were on donepezil. If they were so inclined to take it, I wouldn't be personally worried about interactions there. And then the very, very last question here is just wondering how much a concern, just wondering how much a concern using a relatively low dose of 25 milligrams of methylene blue daily is regarding serotonin syndrome when used with 225 milligrams of 5-HTP. And yes, wondering if those can be taken together. So this would be, another case of like it would be something that would be best to be managed, alongside a healthcare practitioner that is familiar with methylene blue, to, kind of watch out for those symptoms of serotonin syndrome. 5-HTP, to my knowledge, does not have the ability to create excessive amounts of serotonin in the brain, whereas because it's really giving the substrate that the body can then use to make more serotonin, whereas SSRIs or SNRIs are actually inhibiting the reuptake of the serotonin, so it's going to potentially create too much serotonin, which is why one can get serotonin syndrome from, say, taking too high of a dose of an SSRI drug. I mean, it's a rare thing, but it can happen. Whereas with 5-HTP, I think the risk of that is virtually nil, and I feel confident in saying that because when we look at the research literature comparing 5-HTP to SSRI drugs, the side effect profiles are virtually nil with the 5-HTP, and in clinical practice that generally proves to be true as well. So I think that part of the reason that the side effect profile is so low is that with 5-HTP, it doesn't cause the body to have excessive amounts of serotonin. So I think the risk of serotonin syndrome would be that much lower. So again, I would certainly inform my patient about the possible risks, and I would start really low and build up gradually. If my patient was on like 225 milligrams of 5-HTP, which is a fairly robust dose, it's not a massive dose, but it's fairly robust. And so I would be, very, very cautious with it, but I would certainly recommend talking to a healthcare provider about specific recommendations so one doesn't get into a pickle with serotonin syndrome. So thank you for the questions as always. If there are more methylene blue questions, and I know there will be because they're like the most common question type I get, I will do another Q&A video down the road and share my experience. And yeah, methylene blue is great. I have so many patients that have benefited from it. I had a patient earlier today who was, had been on methylene blue for not that long. It's finally like, yeah, it's really helping my energy levels. Like, great, this patient has done a lot of other things, and the methylene blue can be really, really helpful. That being said, there are patients where methylene blue does not seem to make a difference, and so it's not that it's a panacea, but for some folks, it just really, really helps a lot. So, anyways, thank you for the questions, and if there's questions on other topics not related to methylene blue, please also feel free to post in the comment section, and will do my best to answer as soon as I can.